The next thing with tokenization is that you can make the whole financial markets more democratic, where everybody can participate. And there is where really my heart goes to, because then they can secure their own financial future. Hi, I'm Lucas Bruggeman. My role is CEO of BX Swiss Exchange, which is part of the Boerse Stuttgart Group. Boerse Stuttgart Group is the sixth largest exchange group in Europe.
I'm Andreas. I'm working together with Lucas. I'm the Chief Digital Officer of BX Digital, which is part of the Boerse Stuttgart Group. The amazing thing about our service offering is that we do a trading and a settlement, which is going to happen fully on-chain, bridging into the central bank fiat system.
We have two types of businesses. One is more traditional business, where we have a normal regular exchange, and we have 3 exchanges in Europe, in Sweden, in Germany, and in Switzerland. But on top of that, we also stepped into the future a while ago already, where we basically started with Bison. That's the first crypto app in Germany, fully regulated by BaFin, where we provide access to cryptocurrencies to retail clients. And we built on that. Our strategy is providing access in digital assets to European institutional investors, banks, online brokers, but always in a regulated environment. So we're coming from the regulated side in that sense. We are agnostic to which chain we are using. We are agnostic in that we want to see where the future heads to and want to be able to adhere to the client's wishes on where on what chain in the future things will happen.
You may think about, what's the value add of moving the intermediate securities, the traditional world, onto a DLT infrastructure. It may be just the same on a different architecture. What we foresee here as a value add is that you do actually similar stuff, but in a faster, better, and cheaper way, which is the trading and settlement infrastructure, which is supporting this kind of new processing. The second use case is about new products. We're living in a world of securities, and with the new infrastructure, we're going to be able to trade assets which are not traditionally qualified as securities, and that's the next step that we're going to involve.
Not everything has to be on-chain, so we're combining off-chain elements like fiat money with digital tokens, with tokenized securities, which I think is a really, really unique positioning for us in Europe as a group.
There's an element of bridge, you can call it Oracle technically, and then it's an element of a DVP smart contract, and which is a smart contract which is living on-chain, on the blockchain, and is orchestrating the transfer of the assets with the transfer of the cash leg, which is happening in our traditional systems.
In Switzerland, we were able to look far ahead already in democratizing and giving access to digital securities in a very early phase. So we were very lucky to be part of that. And that gives us a bit of an advantage in Europe, because the DLT pilot regime in Europe started later, learned a lot from the maybe mistakes that we made, but the lessons we learned. Digital assets and crypto is fairly new to the, say, old world. So when are retail clients, institutional clients ready for a tokenized world? That's going to be not going overnight, like the old decent capital markets approach. It works, the market seems to be working quite efficiently, but there are a lot of intermediaries and a lot of intransparency. Through crypto, people are getting used to having a digital wallet. And through that, they will also want to place other, like say, digital assets into their wallet. So the adoption of the whole digital asset space is going to come through those people that are used to buying and selling cryptos and having it in their custody and their digital wallets. Those people are also going to buy digital assets. We just closed a very large deal as a group with one of the largest retail banks in Germany. And we are providing a one-stop shop solution in towards of like say, holding the assets, trading the assets, and we're talking about cryptocurrencies. Once these clients are used to buying and holding and selling cryptocurrencies, they will also be open to digital assets. That's our approach. So the adoption comes from that part of the world and not massive change like all banks are going to be digital tomorrow and going to get rid of their legacy. So it will be a slow process, but I think we have found the key, so to say, into that market via our experience that we did in crypto towards digital assets. The cryptocurrency itself, technically, you can sell and buy it and hold it anywhere. Yeah, but you need, on a regulatory point, you need to be able to access certain countries to sell and buy these products, and there are some standards you have to adhere to, especially issuers of digital assets. They have to apply in different countries to adhere to the law, and then they have to start, looking at the differences between those markets. With Bitcoin and Mica, it's easy because it's one product and it's European law. But on digital assets, there's no European harmonization yet. I think the biggest challenge for me is a lack of creativity in the market. I think it needs players like ourselves and others to really put their money where their mouth is, and not only innovate on paper, but really do something like get away from the proof of concepts and start, issuing products on digital exchanges ours. We invite every, bank, buy side, sell side, to participate and list products on the exchange to make the experience. I think that's a very important factor.
I agree. You mentioned standardization, and then standardization on a technical level is about, which is the blockchain of choice. And there's a huge fragmentation in the blockchain protocols that we see here, which is in principle good because it drives innovation. And each blockchain has a certain purpose and they have a reason of being here. But the question is, which ones you're going to go for your specific business purpose. And the second challenge is the blockchain needs to be sufficiently mature that the regulator is going to accept using this blockchain from a regulatory point of view, and they're going to check the integrity, the security, the reliability of the infrastructure, which is not so straightforward to prove for various protocols. We are primarily bridging the off-chain world with the on-chain world, and this bridging is going to happen in two manners. The first one is the trading is happening off-chain, and then there's going to be a messaging bridging into the on-chain world, into the DVP smart contract, which is orchestrating the on-chain settlement. That's the first bridge that we have built. And then there's obviously a second bridge, as we have decided to rely on the fiat Swiss franc cash system, the legacy system which is in place and which is used and trusted by our participants. The on-chain settlement infrastructure is bridging back into that cash settlement system. Chainlink, from my perspective, is a leading organization trying to meet that requirement and provide a solution really to overcome that fragmentation. I think with our offering, we are just providing one piece into a wider system. And the nice thing is, how do we communicate? We have one common language, which is called blockchain protocol. But on the other hand, it's not one language, because we don't have just one blockchain. There are going to be different languages that we have to interconnect with each other. And that brings me back to the role of Chainlink, the translation engine, translating the language of the one blockchain into the language of the other blockchain, really building one great community. I think the challenge about interoperability is about really the reliability of bridging these kind of infrastructures. But I think it's just a matter of time, and we're going to be there, and we're going to have a secure and trusted environment connecting the individual dots together.
You as a person, you as a bank, you want to be able to trade 24/7 basically. And tokenization will help in that aspect. All cash flows in the future, be it liabilities, be it assets, you can program them into a contract. And the programmability of such a contract, a smart contract, will help to find the one single source of truth. I was a swap trader 20 years ago. Every day at 11 o'clock, we had to go to the telex room and get the telex with the confirmation of one of the payment legs. So what's the valuation? And we were arguing with the other bank on their interpretation of the valuation because we didn't agree. If you have a smart contract, there's only one truth, and there will be no hassling about the valuation because it will be in the smart contract. And can you imagine having this type of technology into any financial product? And even better, not only financial products, but also like real tangible assets. You can tokenize anything. So in my view, the future is very bright. And in 10 years, we will have a very different place. But it will take some time to go there. Next thing with tokenization is that actually you can do so much more. You can make the whole financial markets more transparent, more democratic, where everybody can participate. And I think, holding your assets close to where you are with your personal wallet and able to transact and communicate similar as you're already doing in a way, like with social media, etc., being connected. I think it connects people. And I like the technology, but it's not, only the technology which is cool. It has a use of it. And the use is to basically bridge and get people excited about it. Then they can secure their own financial future. And I think that all in all comes to an end via tokenization. Tokenization will help.
That's what actually as well excites me. In the traditional world, we had like this monolithic central providers of financial market infrastructure. And now we are moving into a new world. I think what we're doing is really groundbreaking in terms of we combining the DeFi, the technical DeFi infrastructure with something which is regulated. And that's I think from a global perspective, something which is extremely unique.